In today's video, I am going to talk to you about why retirement isn't always about financial planning or retirement planning. There's a psychological aspect that goes into retirement that a lot of people fail to take into consideration, frankly, because there's not a lot of research done on that. For most people, it's financial planning. They can't wait to retire because they won't have a set routine. They can wake up, do whatever they want. Every day is a Saturday. But typically that doesn't last. And when you consider that for a lot of people, you'll spend roughly a third of your life in retirement. So that initial phase, we should know that it will eventually fade. And so there was a great TED Talk by Dr. Moynes, and he was retired himself, and he decided that he was going to ask or question a bunch of retirees, and he did dozens, and asked them one question, and that was, how do you squeeze all the juice out of retirement? That was the question. And what he found was there was a framework, really, that most retirees went through 4 phases. And so today, that's what I'm going to go over, and hopefully it'll bring some light. And maybe if you're in phase 2, which we'll talk about here in just a minute, that you'll realize that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So phase 1 is really the honeymoon phase. I believe he calls it the vacation phase. But this is when you initially retire, you wake up, and you can do whatever you want. You can sleep in, you can stay in your pajamas all day. For a lot of people, that is when they do a lot of traveling. It's something that they've always wanted to do. But eventually that fades. And in his study, he said about a year on average is how long the honeymoon phase lasts. In my personal experience with clients, it's varied from a few months to even a few years. So they had a lot to do, and it took them a long time to do it. But eventually it does fade. And so when it does, and you start questioning, for example, is this all there is to retirement? If you've asked yourself that question, then know that you're already in phase 2. And in phase 2, this is when you lose the big 5. And what are the big 5? It's routine, identity, relationships, your sense of purpose, and loss of power. And for some people, that can be a lot more traumatic than others. Going through that, or that feeling of losing your routine, your identity, you don't really have a purpose anymore. Now that no one's dependent on you like they were, say, at your job or your children. So for those, they'll go through the 3 Ds, and that can be pretty traumatic. That can be divorce, depression, decline in physical and mental health. And so phase 2 is the one that, of course, nobody wants to go through, but most of us will go through it. And the key is when you know you're in it, you're not alone, number 1, but number 2, that you know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So by the time you get through phase 2, whenever you start thinking, I'm not going to spend the next 20 or 30 years feeling like this, then you'll move into phase 3. Now in this phase, this is when you really need to experiment. So this is the trial and error phase. For a lot of people, they do like routine. They didn't like it where they were working, but they actually missed the routine, looking forward to something. I've got actually having to have a calendar with times and dates on it that it's like, hey, I've got to go do this, I've got to go here, to whether it's volunteering, part-time job, mentoring, whatever the case is. They like that routine and that feeling of purpose, or I guess even really just feeling valuable to other people. So when you're in phase 3, the key to it is to just experiment, because for a lot of people, when they move through that phase 2, they decide, I'm not going to spend the rest of my retirement this way. But they don't know what to do. This is when you get out there and you volunteer for a nonprofit, volunteer for your church, volunteer for a book group, a bicycle or walking group, whatever the case is. There's a myriad of things that you can try and realize that you're not going to get a lot of them. So it's trial and error. And then you'll eventually find the things that you really enjoy, and some things you may have never thought you would enjoy, you do enjoy. Because now, instead of only having a few hours in the evening, you've got all day. You can try some things, and some things you may want to do once a week instead of every day, or once a month. and that could be mentoring or volunteering. And some people choose to go back to work in a part-time or consultant type capacity because they actually enjoyed what they did, but they just didn't want the mandatory. It's like, when I want to go do something, I want to be able to go do it. So in that way, they can just be a consultant, work when they want to work. And a lot of corporations actually will allow that, because it's not a full-time employee that they have to do this, but they'll pay you to come in and mentor other coworkers. So in phase 3, the key to it is, again, to experiment. Try out lots of different things until you find what it is that you enjoy. So phase 4, a lot of people make it to phase 4, but some people don't. Not everyone breaks into phase 4, but phase 4, these are the happiest people. And this is the time when you reinvent, or I guess rewire yourself, and you answer the tough questions, which is, what is my mission here? What is my mission here in retirement? My purpose here in retirement? And you really get granular with those questions. And what it seems like, and especially in Dr. Riley's research, what he found was that one of the most common ways to break into phase 4 is to realize, or I guess it involves, service to others. So a lot of that's charitable work. There was a great picture, which I'll throw up here, of you could just be like the old coots. They just put up a tent and said, ask us any questions. They felt like their years of experience were a way for them to give back. And they thought the answers may not be right, but it was just something they enjoyed doing. And that community, that sense of community, is something that's very important. But again, that phase 4 is that typically it involves that service to others. So you might mentor someone. It doesn't have to be a child. It could be a coworker. It could be someone your own age that maybe you're really good with technology. And so you're always FaceTiming and doing this stuff with your kids or grandkids. And you may be able just to teach your friends, or start a class to where you teach older people that don't know how to use these technologies, how to use them, get them comfortable using those technologies. So for a lot of people, again, phase 4 is not guaranteed, but I want to believe that most people will make it there. So I urge you to enjoy phase 1, be prepared for phase 2, do not stop experimenting, or the trial and error of trying new things of phase 3. And then I really hope that you all get to reap the rewards of phase 4. So until next time, guys, choose your advisors wisely. Your financial health depends on it.